I'm MeChelle Callen. I'm a speaker, author, and a coach. I'm from a really small town in northern Indiana. I grew up there till I was about 16 and then moved to Muncie, Indiana. First one in my family to go to college, first one in my family to actually leave our small town and move away and move to the big city of New York City for a few years. Family is hugely important to me. And with that, when I say family, for me, it's not just the folks in my immediate circle, my immediate family. Family is the people that we choose to let into our lives. That's just not about letting people in on a personal level, but it's also about advocating for people, for my community, for that family that I've created. So being there for others and helping others find their value, that's really important to me. It was my desire as a kid to go to law school, and I'm not a lawyer, so obviously I didn't pursue that. And so my corporate journey really started out in the not-for-profit sector. My first job was coordinating volunteers for the American Cancer Society out in New Jersey. And that was really the start of my career. And what we very quickly realized was that was human resources, right? It was just unpaid staff. And that started my journey in human resources. I've really spent my entire career in that area of developing people. So something that I'm always very passionate about is helping people develop, to grow, to be everything that they want to be. And so my career has really been in a lot of different sectors. I've worked in healthcare for over 17 years. I've worked in commercial real estate, financial services, back to not-for-profits. One thing that has remained consistent, though, is that value of humans. I always say there's a reason the word human comes before resources in human resources, because it's about the people. I thought that the pinnacle of success would be to have an executive position, to be a chief. We used to jokingly call it the Tower of Power at one of the organizations I worked at. And that was always my dream, to be in that position. In fact, I had shared with my boss at that time, who was in the Tower of Power, when she asked, where do you see yourself in 5 years or 10 years? I said, I want your job. And she actually started me on that path then to how I would get there. I really spent my career with that goal in mind, to become a chief human resource officer. So throughout my career, I noticed I had women as leaders, very strong women. But there were a few times in my career where that was silenced. It wasn't necessarily that I had a male leader. That wasn't necessarily the case. But it was this feeling that I was too much in the moment, or I spoke too much, or I had too many ideas, or I was too fill in that blank. And I noticed that wasn't just me that was experiencing that. It was other women that, as we would talk and share with one another, we just felt like there were moments where we weren't heard, that we weren't valued for what we brought to the table. And so it began to shift my way of behaving. So I got a little quieter in meetings. I would ask ahead of time what's expected of me, because I wanted to make sure that I was not overstepping, or I wasn't saying too much, or what was it going to look like. I even remember having a hard time figuring out where to sit at the table when I'd walk into a room. Should I sit in the back? Should I sit in the front? Where's the right place to be? I spent a lot of time questioning myself. And I found that I wasn't the only one doing that my peers were experiencing that and doing that as well. I was a freshman in high school, and I became the target of some bullying from two twin boys that were in my class. I guess the words that were used to describe me as a kid: quirky, weird, nerdy. It was all those things that we all know from high school, that somebody gets to be that kid. I wanted so desperately to belong. I wanted to be one of those kids. And so I decided the way to do that would be to try out for cheerleading. And so my freshman year, I tried out to be a cheerleader, and I can't do a cartwheel to save my life even to this day. They determined who would be cheerleaders is actually the student body voted. And so there was the entire freshman class in the gymnasium for the junior varsity cheerleading tryouts. They called my name to come out, and when I stepped out onto the floor, these boys and their friends started booing me. And other kids joined in. And I was out there doing I kept going. I was fighting cheers as hard as I could. I did my cheer. I walked off, and the entire time they stood and booed. I did not tell my family about that, my parents, when I came home, and my mom was like, "How is it?" I was like, "It was fine. It was good." It was actually the basketball coach who was in his office who heard that came out and then saw what was happening and shared it with my parents. It was really hard for me to find my place at that school. In fact, I only went to that school for 2 years, and then we relocated. So my dad's job moved us, but also the decision was made to move so that I would have an opportunity to start again. When you find a place where you don't belong, or you don't feel like you can belong, you don't need to change who you are. You need to find the place where you belong. And I was very fortunate because we moved to Muncie. I got to go to a new school. I found a lot of nerdy kids. We were on the debate team together, the speech team, and I found my people, and I found where I belonged. Not just my voice, but me, that I was too much. That I'm too loud, that I'm too boisterous, that I'm too opinionated, that I'm just too much. That's the lie that I believed. I told it to myself. Other folks have said that to me, and then I told that to myself until that became my truth. It cost me opportunities, but more importantly, I think the main thing, it cost me time. It cost me time that I spent not showing up as my authentic self, not showing up and sharing my ideas. I had that inner voice that would say, "This is what you should say. This is where you should be." But I would quiet her and say, "Yeah, no, not today or not now." And so that's what it cost me. It cost me time to be who I was, to share. And I believe that it cost other people because I didn't show up completely myself. I didn't show up and say the things I should have said. And I don't know what that could have cost other people. For me, one of those moments was actually becoming a mom. This lie I'd been telling myself, that I was too much, that my voice didn't matter, that I needed to be quieter, that I needed to be a different person. I had an obligation to not minimize who I was so that I could raise my children to be bold, to get out there, to share their ideas, to be their authentic selves, to embrace the world and everything they had to offer. How could I share with my children, be all you can be? I believe in you. You can do anything. You can be anybody, and who you are is enough. If I didn't do that for myself and portray that in my work, in my personal life, that was a pivotal moment for me as I began to have those conversations with my little kids to then say, but am I walking that walk? Am I authentically showing them what it looks like to know that you are enough and to share your voice and your talents? That's a recent revelation, actually. One of the things that when I talk about just is a thief, especially as women, we minimize what we do, who we are, and our accomplishments. I said, for example, what brought this to light for me is I'm writing a chapter in a book. I'm co-authoring a book. And someone said to me, it's always been your dream to be published. And here you are doing it. And I said in that moment, I'm not writing a book, I'm just writing a chapter. And all of that joy and excitement and pride that I had felt in accomplishing that goal in that moment, it was literally like, oh, I took my own joy away, and before anybody else could celebrate, I took that celebration away from myself and from others. And in that moment, that was a turning point, and actually what I ended up writing the chapter in the book about, how just is this thief. And I started to hear it. I started paying attention to it. And women would say, oh, I'm just mid-management, or I'm just an employee, I'm just a mom. Young women, I'm just on the JV team. We use that word, but when we use that word, when we use that phrase, we take away our power. And I was doing that. I was taking away my accomplishments, I was taking away my power, I was taking away my voice. And I am becoming very aware of the limiting words that I use and the limiting words that we all use, and that we use those words and they begin to disqualify us for all that we bring to the table. I was fired from my job the day before my 59th birthday. And what that did and how that changed how I show up is, up to that point, I truly believed that a lot of my value as a human being was tied to a title, was tied to the work I did and my career. And in that moment, I had to face that, because everything that I had worked for my entire career, what I thought was the end all and be all because I was a chief HR professional, that changed in an instant. And so I had to stop and reevaluate that. And what it reminded me of is what I had forgotten so many times, that my worth, that everyone's worth, is not tied to a title, it's not tied to a job or a career. That changed the way I showed up. It changed the way I showed up for myself. It changed the way I showed up for my family, and the way I showed up for organizations, and now for the clients that I work with. I thought that was my ultimate goal, to be a chief human resource officer. And when that title was stripped from me, who was I? What had I worked for my entire life? And then, as I talk about with folks, I still have that title. I'm the chief executive officer of my own life and my own business. So what I thought was taken away was really a moment where it was being revealed to me that there was more for me. It wasn't just about me, there's more now, because I have a chance to share those stories. There are folks, especially today, that are losing their jobs, that are being downsized, that maybe aren't aligning with their leadership. It's so important that we recognize that who we are, it's not our compensation. It's about how we show up in our own lives and how we show up in the lives of others. I want to say to the younger MeChelle, you are enough. You are so valuable to the world, and the things that you are going to accomplish and the lives that you are going to impact, you cannot even imagine right now. So don't sit on the sidelines, and don't let other people tell you your worth. You've got this, and you are going to do amazing things and meet amazing people in your life, and it's just going to be phenomenal. So keep the faith, be strong, and just know that there is a big world out there that's waiting on you to show up. That's what I would tell MeChelle, the little girl. I see you, and I want you to know that it doesn't matter where you've been or what you've been through. There is a way through. There is freedom. You are here with purpose, and you are never too old, even at 60. You are never too old to step into that purpose. And you are valuable, you are worthy, you are valued by so many, and I see you. There is so much shame when we've had a career loss or when we've been through a really trying experience in life where we've lost our courage, we've lost our way. There's so much shame that's put on us for those moments. And what burns for me is that ability to say, you're not alone. Others of us have been there and we've come through it. And to not be ashamed to say, yeah, I'm one of those people. And I've got you. That's what burns for me, is to know this is not about stepping on the stage. This is not about being a sage on the stage. It's about being real and saying, you know what? Life is hard sometimes. It'd be great if it were easy, but it's not. But you know what? You've got everything you need to get through this. And you've got people around you who will help you too. That's what burns in my belly, is that just that helping people to see, step into who you're meant to be, bring yourself boldly, unapologetically into the rooms, at the tables, into your families, because you're needed and you're valued. I talked about that experience of being fired from a position because I didn't align with the organization anymore. That was a moment for me because I was not living my truth. I was not living in my values. And what it means to me now to live boldly, to live authentically, I'm not compromising anymore. I'm not compromising for a job. I'm not compromising for other people. I know what I believe. I know what I value. I know what justice looks like for me. I know what accountability looks like for me. I know what my truth is. This is who I am. You don't have to love me, but I love myself and I know my purpose. And I'm not afraid to stand in my truth and in my purpose. What I know is I am strong. I am powerful. I am loved. I am valued. I am worthy. I am. And that's what I want others to know too. They are valued, they are worthy. I want them to stand in that place where they can boldly say, I am, and whatever that is for them. Phenomenal, fantastic, successful, whatever that is, I am now, is being able to stand in that position and say, I am me. As women, we know how important it is for the world right now to have our voice. I would hope that every woman who hears my voice and hears my story, I believe they'll see themselves in pieces of that. Too often we say, but they can do that. Oh, I wish I could. Oh, if only I could be. The world needs to hear our voices, to hear the voice of a woman, whether it's at a boardroom table, whether it's at the kitchen table or the community table. There's a space for our experiences and what we bring to the table through those experiences. Now more than ever, our voices, our journeys as women can be the blueprint for other women coming behind us or even those in front of us. It could be someone's survival guide. And when we don't share our voice, when we don't share our experiences, when we don't step into our power, we not only deny ourselves those opportunities, but we potentially deny others as well. When I step out on the stage, one of the things that ignites me is being able to connect with women. As I share some of the stories of my life and my experiences, I see the head nods. I've actually seen the laughter. I've seen some tears. I connect on a very personal level. And what I think is important is this isn't one of those just kumbaya moments, right? Where we all sit around and say, yeah, we've been there, and just gonna pick ourselves up and dust ourselves off, and by gosh, we're gonna keep going with a smile on our face, and here we go. What I don't do is I don't give people power. We all have the power within us. It's me helping them to remember who they are, the power that they have, and to ignite that flame, that ember that's burning in them, because they have that. They just have forgotten the tools they need to turn up the flame.